The tyrant dies and his rule is over. The martyr dies and his rule begins. People understand me so poorly that they don't even understand my complaint about them not understanding me. There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true, the other is to refuse to believe what is true. People demand freedom of speech as a compensation for the freedom of thought which they seldom use. The proud person always wants to do the right thing, the great thing. But because he wants to do it in his own strength, he is fighting not with man, but with God. Above all, do not lose your desire to walk. Every day, I walk myself into a state of well-being, walk away from every illness. I have walked myself into my best thoughts. The task must be made difficult, for only the difficult inspires the noble-hearted. What if everything in the world were a misunderstanding? What if laughter were really tears? To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. I see it all perfectly. There are two possible situations. One can either do this or that. My honest opinion and my friendly advice is this: do it or do not do it, you will regret both. Face the facts of being what you are, for that is what changes what you are. If anyone on the verge of action should judge himself according to the outcome, he would never begin. What is a poet? An unhappy man who hides deep anguish in his heart, but whose lips are so formed that when the sigh and cry pass through them, it sounds like lovely music. Why bother remembering a past that cannot be made into a present? How absurd men are. They never use the liberties they have, they demand those they do not have. They have freedom of thought, they demand freedom of speech. There is nothing with which every man is so afraid as getting to know how enormously much he is capable of doing and becoming. Listen to the cry of a woman in labor at the hour of giving birth. Look at the dying man's struggle at his last extremity, and then tell me whether something that begins and ends thus could be intended for enjoyment. Therefore do not deceive yourself. Of all deceivers fear most yourself. It is perfectly true, as philosophers say, that life must be understood backwards. But they forget the other proposition, that it must be lived forwards. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. Truth always rests with the minority, and the minority is always stronger than the majority because the minority is generally formed by those who really have an opinion. The present state of the world and the whole of life is diseased. If I were a doctor and were asked for my advice, I should reply, create silence. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. If I were to wish for anything, I should not wish for wealth and power, but for the passionate sense of the potential, for the eye which, ever young and ardent, sees the possible. It is perhaps the misfortune of my life that I am interested in far too much, but not decisively in any one thing. All my interests are not subordinated in one, but stand on an equal footing. It is very important in life to know when your cue comes. The self-assured believer is a greater sinner in the eyes of God than the troubled disbeliever. Leap of faith, yes, but only after reflection. The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays. It is the duty of the human understanding to understand that there are things which it cannot understand. Far from idleness being the root of all evil, it is rather the only true good. Life has its own hidden forces which you can only discover by living. It is so hard to believe because it is so hard to obey. God creates out of nothing. Wonderful, you say. Yes, to be sure, but he does what is still more wonderful. He makes saints out of sinners. Faith is namely this paradox that the single individual is higher than the universal. In addition to my other numerous acquaintances, I have one more intimate confidant. My depression is the most faithful mistress I have known. I have only one confidant, and that is the silence of night. Why is it my confidant? Faith is the most important factor in religious questions. Every mental act is composed of doubt and belief, but it is belief that is the positive. It is belief that sustains thought and holds the world together. My melancholy is the most faithful sweetheart I have had. And this is one of the most crucial definitions for the whole of Christianity, that the opposite of sin is not virtue but faith. Faith is the highest passion in a human being. Many in every generation may not come that far, but none comes further. For he who loves God without faith reflects on himself, while the person who loves God in faith reflects on God. If I am capable of grasping God objectively, I do not believe, but precisely because I cannot do this I must believe. Love is the expression of the one who loves, not of the one who is loved. To cheat oneself out of love is the most terrible deception. It is an eternal loss for which there is no reparation, either in time or in eternity. Don't forget to love yourself. My depression is the most faithful mistress I have known. No wonder, then, that I return the love. On the secretly blushing cheek is reflected the glow of the heart. When one has once fully entered the realm of love, the world, no matter how imperfect, becomes rich and beautiful. It consists solely of opportunities for love. Never cease loving a person, and never give up hope for him. Those who think they can love only the people they prefer do not love at all. Love discovers truths about individuals that others cannot see. I have only one friend, and that is Echo. Why is it my friend? Because I love my sorrow, and Echo does not take it away from me. In my great melancholy, I loved life, for I love my melancholy. Love does not alter the beloved, it alters itself.